Or good morning, good day, everyone. We're starting a new Maamar. It's in the Maamar Mulkatim Chelik Aleph of the previous Rebbe, page 192. So, welcome back, Moshe. So, Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz, which is the upcoming month, is the days when the Rebbe Rayatz of Yosef Yitzchak, the author of these Maimorim, was released from his imprisonment, initially his death sentence on Gimel Tammuz of 1927. His death sentence was commuted to prison in Kostrama. And ultimately, at Yud Beis Tammuz, he was given permission to go free. And ever since then, not only Hasidim, but Torah giants like Reb Chaim Oizer and Reb Chaim Brisker spoke very favorably about the Rebbe Rayatz, and I documented it in some of my books. I printed an actual letter that Reb Chaim Oizer sent asking everyone to give funds to help the release of the Rebbe. I have an actual letter. A Yid here in Borough Park had a copy, and he gave it to me. So the day Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz, although it's technically about a Lubavitcher Rebbe, a tzaddik, and also something in the past, our Rebbe celebrated it in a very, very special way every year. My father-in-law, who was a Russian chassid, and his ilk of people, for them, Yud Beis Tammuz was like the greatest Yom Tov, even in a way, more than Yutes Kislev, because it was personal. Their Rebbe, their leader, his life was on the line and his life was spared. And they were most happy. So this Maamar was said on Yud Beis Tammuz Tafresh Pei Tes. 2 years later, 1929. Let's see what the Rebbe says. Ma Tovu oyalecha Yaakov mishkanesecha Yisro. Usually the Parshas HaShavua that the Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz is the parsha of where it appears the Matayv Lecha Yaakov Mishkecha Yisrael. How good are your tents, Jacob, Yaakov, your Mishkecha, your dwelling places, Yisrael. Yomer Rabbi saying the Gemara, the sages say in the Gemara in Brachas, Mi birchose shaleisa Rasha, from the bracha of that Rasha, i.e. Bilam, who wanted to, chas v'sholem, bless, in quotations, the opposite of blessing. Lomad, ata lomad mahoya b'liboy. You know what was in his heart. Bikish leimer shelo yeh lohem botek nosis ubotim medroshis. Really, Avi, what Bilam wanted to say was that the Jews should not have shuls and study halls, but knasiyas and but madrashas. And what came out of his mouth, because he could not utter the curse, what came out? Omar, he said, Matoivu yelecha Yaakov. He said just the opposite. How good are your tents, Yaakov, referring to shuls and beis medrashes. Next part of the medrash. He wanted to say the Shekhinah should not dwell upon the Yidden. And what came out of his mouth, Omar, he said, Mishkanesecha Yisrael, your tents, Mishkanesecha Yisrael, I rest in my Shekhinah rests in the Yiddish camp. So he said just the opposite of what he wanted to say. Here ends the Medrash. The Frierdiker Rebbe sees Shmuel in the Lashon Ohalecha, So referring to not only one type of tent, but two. Al-Ole, Teira, Utfila, the tents of Teira, and the twins of Tefillah, and the tents of Tefillah. Kosov, as it says, V'Yakov Ishtom, Yaakov was a sincere person, Yeshev Eyalim, sitting in the tents, plural. In other words, not just in the Ohel of Teira, or just in the Ohel of Tefillah, but both in a tent of Teira and a tent of Tefillah. Comes the question, V'tzarach lahavin, Lom mechalek bet the knesias u'midrashis. Why does the pasuk mechalek between bet the knesias and madrashis, vashrois hashchina, and the dwelling of the shchina l'shnei inyonim, to two ideas? Right? When you learn, the shchina is here. When you daven, the shchina is here. So really, it's one inyan. It's one idea. And yet, it says, Tovu elecha Yaakov, referring to the two tents of Teira and Tefillah, and Mishkenesecha Yisrael refers to the Shechina dwelling. The implication, Moshe, is that's two separate ideas. The Rebbe's question is, it's not really two separate ideas. They go hand in hand. That's his question. And he continues, Umeyaches botek nasias umidrashim v'Yaakov. If we take a look at the particulars, he attributes shuls and beis medrash to Yaakov, to the name Yaakov, and yet he attributes the dwelling of the Shechina, Vashra Shechina, Yisrael, to Israel, to Yisrael. So that's also why, Yaakov, why is Bate Medrash and Bate Knesios for Yaakov, that name, and Hashraz Hashchino Mishkenesecha Yisrael for the name Yisrael. The Behemes Heiminyan Echad. The Rebbe says, if you really think about it, they're one idea, and he explains. The Bate Knesia is Heimikdash Miat. Shuls are miniature temples. And what do we say? Valkol Be'asara, and on all 10 people, Jews that get together, Shchinta Sharia, the Shechina rests upon. So in other words, when you have a Beis HaKnesses, when you have shuls, which are miniature temples, we know that Jews gather in a shul. By the very fact that Yidden are gathered in a shul, you have the Shechina there. And so too, next line, Ubate Medrash, study halls, Beis Medrashes, Heim Oli Teira, they are the tents of Teira, Ushchina Shruyasham, and the Shechina is found there. So he concludes his question, Im Kain, if so, Loma Mechalkam Bebeizin Yonim Miyuchodim. Why does he divide the concepts into two separate categories? That one is but the Knesset is but the Medrash, and the other one is the Shechina, and one is attributed to Yaakov, one is attributed to Yisrael. That's his questions. So to comprehend this, we need to get into a general idea. As I told you many times, the Maamar, the Hasidic Maamar that we'll learn, that we know from the Alter Rebbe to the Rebbe's time, it's the meat and potatoes that we address. And somehow the questions will be answered. In other words, what we really are looking for here is the teichen, what the subject matter of the most of the Maamar. And then the questions, okay, we'll get them answered. And if we don't get them answered, it's not the end of the world. This isn't like another sefer, which most, by the way, just for a second, most Hasidus Sforim are on the Parsha. And therefore, the question and answer, the parsha is most relevant. In a Maamar Hasidus, it's called Divrei Elokim Chayim. It's word of the living God. It's Elikus. It's godliness as communicated through the tzaddik to the listeners to understand and use in Avodas Hashem. That's the objective of a Maamar, not to answer a question. So it's very, I know it's like different Western way of thinking is you ask a question, give me an answer. Chassidus, Chabad Chassidus, is very different. And therefore it takes patience. So Let's go on. Let's understand first this following introduction. Masha Kosov, it's written, Nosati l'reyecho neis lisneises from the keshet selah. You've given to you the ones that fear you, neis, like a flag, or lisneises to uplift, mipnei keshet selah. You've given them, neis has several interpretations. You've given something to be proud with because it's eternal. Upeirush Rashi explains, Nosata l'reyecho neis. Rashi interprets not a flag, but Rashi interprets neis from the word nisyonos, trials and tribulations. Nosati l'reyecho neis. You have tested those that are fearful of you. Nisyonos shel tzoris harbe. Thank you very much. Rashi says that those that are reyacha are given by Hashem nisyonos, in the language here, tzoris harbe, of much problems, many tzoris. And the purpose is lihisnoises, liyois minusam behem, to be tested by the tzoris. Im yamdu beyirosecha, if they who experience the tzaros will still stand beyirosecha with having fear for you. Very heavy, but that's Rashi's interpretation on the verse. Why does Hashem give specifically Re'echo, the God-fearing Yidden, these trials and tribulations? It's to see if they really are Yirecha, God-fearing. V'hainu the Peirush neis miloshen nisoyin. This is the Frierdiker Rebbe saying. The Rashi interprets the pasuk, the word neis in the pasuk in Tehillim, miloshen nisoyin, associated with the word nisoyin, tests, trials, and tribulations. Comes along with, yes, Yonason.
Ja, aber man will es hat also der Gati kirei kim ata.
And therefore
it Avram passed the test of the Akedah, and therefore Hashem knew that he feared it.
Correct. Yes. Comes along with, thank you. Metzudas David Peirush. The Metzudas David is the commentary over there in Tehillim, and he says, Neis Miloshin Hagbo v'haroma. That Neis has another meaning, to exalt, to uplift. Kaneis Hagavoya. Like the exalt, the high Neis. The high, I don't know if it's flag, and like on a ship you have the, I forget what it's called, but yes.
Yeah. When the Yidden were in the Midbar and the snake came, Hashem told Moshe to put a couple snake on a high place.
Correct.
And the word of it is nes.
Right.
The Yidden will look up to Hashem and do sure.
Right. And the Metzudas Tzion in footnote 9, I believe, refers to that pasuk, Kaneis Hagavoya, like putting that snake up high, everyone should see it. Anyway, Upeirush, so according to the Metzudas David, how he takes the verse in Tehillim, Nosata l'reyecha, you've given to those that fear you, neis lehisnoisis. Meyata, from now on, titin l'reyecha, you give to the ones that fear you, harama, an exaltedness, an exaltation, l'hisreimam ba'olam, to be exalted in the world. The purpose, Shmuel, of the Nisyonos is to make the Yidden exalted in the world. Okay?
Two conflicting meanings. The meanings really converge. They're both related.
Yeah, that's true. But it's two different. One is Neis Meloshin Nisoyin, one is Neis Meloshin Hagba. Okay. Now I think the Rebbe is going to say what you're alluding to, Shmuel. Next page 893. Second word. The Shnei Pirushim Hu Mehamedrash. Both of these interpretations, he says, are found in the Medrash and Mefarish, Neislis, Neises. The Medrash interprets this verse in Tehillim, Nisoyin Acher Nisoyin, test after test, and then the Medrash uses the words. Listen to the words: V'gidulin Acher Gidulin, greatness after greatness. So, like Shmuel said, somehow the Medrash puts the interpretation of Rashi and the interpretation of Matsuda Siyan together. Nisoyin Acher Nisoyin, comma, Gidulin Acher Gidulin. Greatness after greatness. And the reason for having both of these ideas, the tests and greatness, is Bishvil Nasaisam Ba'olam. This is all from the Medrash. It's to test them, or also Bishvil Gadlam Ba'olam, to make them greater in the world. So both the Medrash combines both interpretations. Kaneis hazeh shel svina. You see? You understand? What's that called? The thing?
M-A-S-T. M-A-S-T.
Right, the mast. Thank you. I forgot. Yes, the mast. Kaneis hazeh shel svina, like the mast of a ship. Okay. Now, by the way, the mast of a ship is not there to test you. It's there to make you great, right? But whatever. In other words, when he brings this, Kaneis hazeh shel svina, I believe that's specifically referring to the second meaning of Bishvil Gadlon, Gidulin Acher Gidulin. Yes, Yaakov?
The other part of Nace is that it's a flag, so it's a banner. What you raise up is what the Rebbe is saying, that we are
right.
Right. An elite coming with an A.
Correct.
But it also becomes our banner. It becomes our badge of honor.
Right. No, for why? Yeah. Pirush Ashlishi. Now the Rebbe brings a third meaning. Benes. Hu meloshin niflois. He says that the word nes also means wonders, niflois. Nes means that it's an act that Yoni transcends nature. Now, this is a third meaning. Why? Why is a third meaning, Moshe? Why? Because the first two are within Teva, right? God forbid you have tzaras, it's natural. And the point of the tzaras is to test you. The idea of being great in the world is in the world. The third interpretation of Nes is L'mayla min HaTeva. It transcends nature. Because the third idea of Nes is Niflaos. Niflaos are miracles, wonders, breaking Teva, breaking nature. That's what he says. According to the third meaning of the word Nes, how would you interpret the pasuk in Tehillim, which is, by the way, Kapitel Samach? So, Nosata l'reyecho Nes. Hashem, you have given to those that fear you Nes. Nisyoiner shotzoris rabis. You've given them tests consisting of, consisting of many tzaros. V'hu bichdei lihis noises. It's in order to legodlam, to make them great, ba'olam, in the world, Kaneis shel svina, like the mast of a ship, she'inidas lemerchok, that's seen very far in the distance. V'hainu, the gam b'mayim rabim shel mehayom, meaning that even in the abundant waters of the ocean, hamatul charod al yeshun b'svina, which places fear and tremble on those that are sitting in the ship and in the middle of the ocean with the waves and everything else. Just as the mast of the ship stands firm and its bitochen, v'chayzek, and its strength. Shemeire al hareimim uzvagvo, because it denotes exaltation. Kach yirei Hashem. So those that fear Hashem, shehein yireyecha, who are those that fear you, right? Because it says nosata lireyecha, those that fear you, oimdim chazak. They stand strong, ba'avedosam, in their service and avodah b'teiro mitzvahs, migeidol bitchoinam, because they have tremendous bitochoin, trust. Shehu b'koyach shelamayla min hateva. How can you do it? Because it comes from that part of the neshama that transcends nature. Only with that koyach of the neshama that's l'mayla min hateva can you overcome Tzoras Rabbis. Otherwise, you succumb. Otherwise, you can't handle it. It's too much. Otherwise, you question and you give up. And so now what the Rebbe did over here is he's schlepping the third interpretation and the word nes into the other two interpretations, and he's making it all one concept. That those nisyonis harbe, that's the first meaning, those tests, that its purpose is to make you great, and by overcoming the trials and tribulations. How can you do it? Only if you have the third interpretation of nes, which is miracles, niflois, within your soul, transcendence, l'mayla min hateva, and you access that, you can overcome. U'k'moshe kosov, as it says, vayikra shmoi Hashem Nisi. Hashem Nisi. Hashem is Yud Kei Vav Kei. Hu Nei Shalonu. So pasuk in B'Shalach. Hashem Nisi. So the Psisk, in footnote 12, he brings that the Psisk Rabbosi, one of the Midrashim and commentators, says that Hashem raised the Yidden to like the mast of a ship, right? The point being like this: why does it say Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei Nisi? It could say Elokim Nisi, right? There's 7 names. The Pasuk says in B'Shalach Hashem Nisi. Now the Rebbe is learning pshat in this based on the Medrash that it's the Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is l'mayla min hateva, it's transcendence. If you compare the name of Elokim to Yud Kei Vav Kei, Elokim is Gematria 86, which is also Gematria Hateva nature. Nisi, to experience miracles, to experience transcendence, it's only with Yud Kei Vav Kei. You have to live and act and be Yud Kei Vav Kei. The Alter Rebbe, this Maamar, you should know, has its origins in a Maamar in Likutei Torah of the Alter Rebbe, Tovu Eilecha. It's a very famous Maamar of the Alter Rebbe in Likutei Torah. I believe in that Maamar, Tovu, the Alter Rebbe explains there and in many other places, but I believe there as well, that the Yud Kei Vav Kei is in every single Yid. Yeah, there's the Yud, the Chochmah, the K is Bina, the Vav are the Midos, and the last K is the Malchus. So there's the head, and there's the body, and there's the heart, and there's the feet. So in other words, when we say to emulate and to live Yud Kei Vav Kei, it doesn't mean like some abracadabra mystical idea. Of course, it's a mystical idea, but it's in us. That we have the Eibishter's Yud Kei Vav Kei in ourselves, and if we access every letter of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in ourselves, we're able to overcome. And that is why I think Yaakov mentioned the other day, but in the Krishma Shel Amita, we talk about the different transgressions that we've done, and we say, Keneged Yud, Keneged K, Keneged Vav, Keneged K. Right? We're asking for forgiveness, that we made a blemish in the Yud, in this mitzvah, in the K, in this mitzvah. I don't know if all of you say this, but take a look at in the Arizal Siddur, brought in the Chabad Siddur too, and you will see there's 4 small paragraphs which says these things, and it is better if you could say that every night. I'll call upon him. What we understand from this is that if it were to be something that's not shaykh to us, why are we saying it? We're saying it because the Torah believes and the Arizal believes that it is applicable to you, and the Rebbe here does the same thing. Hashem Nisi. If the Torah says Hashem Nisi, that means the Torah believes that man can access Yud Kei Vav Kei to accomplish Nisi, wonders, and you know that this is so important. Because who doesn't have tzaras? You know a person doesn't have tzaras? No. Anyone who thinks that way, sorry, is wrong, okay? Everyone has an issue. And personal, communal, etc., etc. So when we have a taich like this, Hashem Nisi, it's a gewaldige support that the Frierdiker Rebbe is teaching us in a Maamar that he said in 1929, so many years ago, and we're learning it this morning, today. In other words, we can take the Yud Kei Vav Kei and bring transcendence into our life and overcome the tzaras. Push it. And this is very consoling. You know what I'm saying? It's comforting, but more than just comforting, it's accessible. So you have to plug in to Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yes, Yonis.
I'm wondering why the Rebbe doesn't mention the word "nes," which means miraculous.
He says "nes meloshen niflois."
Yeah, but that has another connotation, niflaot.
And yes, okay. So first of all, he might get into it later. I don't, could be, but. Yonason is asking a question. We need a little background. It says in Chassidus, there's a difference between a nes that's a nes, a miracle, and a nes that's in a manner of niflaot, a miracle in the way of wonders. So he's asking, why doesn't it just say nes miloshin nisim? Why nes miloshin niflaot? And the answer is, Yonason, because for some of the tzaras that we have, even a nes is not enough. It's not a joke. It's a real. It's not something that we should have, chas v'sholom. But there's sometimes such an issue that's so tangling and so debilitating and so difficult that a regular miracle is not enough, and you have to have like a miracle like the splitting of the Red Sea or something that's niflois, that's totally transcendent. You probably learned, Yonason, there are Maamar of the Rebbe. There's a Maamar of the Rebbe that he said, I believe in 1951. Yeah, I think the first Maamar Yud Beis Thomas that our Rebbe said in 1951, if my recollection is correct, it begins with the pasuk Neislis Noises. This pasuk, and over there's a lot of language, a lot of discussion about your point. So I encourage you. A Jew answers a Jew with a question. You ask me a question, and I'm giving you homework. Learn that Maamar. Okay, before we go on, I want to know if anyone has any questions, if everything's clear. Pasha, I need some water, please. Okay, if everything's clear, we'll go on. Let's see how he develops the idea. Beis. To understand this better, the Hiniksiv, it says, Nase, a posik in Devarim, Pashas Re'eh. Nase, Hashem Alekeichem, Eschem Ladas. Hashem, your God, will test you, Ladas, to see if you have das, if you have common sense. No, das means if you have knowledge, if you really believe in God. But, it also includes, Hashem tests us sometimes to see if we're on the ball and we have common sense. Believe me, many times, that's just as important as having das and godliness. Tayidei hanisyonos boyim lepchinas adas. The Rebbe teaches, and again this is brought already in the Alter Rebbe's Maamar, that through tests, through trials, we come to experience das, concentration in God, in godliness. V'hainu dayidei shemizgaber al advorim hamoinim u'ma'akvim. Through overcoming those things that prevent us me'avodas Hashem yisbarach b'Torah tefillah, in serving God through the Torah tefillah v'kiyam mitzvahs, and we overcome the obstacles. Hine al yedei zer magiyim l'dasas Hashem. That's the way you reach Yaakov, concentrating in God. L'dasas Hashem. We don't mean here das just having information. We mean binding with God. Elokim b'gematria teva. I mentioned earlier the name Elokim of Hashem. Its numerical equivalent is like the numerical equivalent of the word hateva, the nature, which equals 86. V'alpi hateva hariyazman hu b'seder de'ovar hoive v'yosit. Based on nature, everything is divided to past, present, and future. But through experiencing tests and trials and tribulations, we reach L'das Hashem, having das in God, which means the Havaya, we reach not Elokim, but we reach actually Yud Kei Vav Kei, Hu Hoya, turn the page, top of 194. Ki echad. We have past, present, and future all in one, which is shelamaylam and ateva. It's not rational, it's not logical, it's beyond nature. So in other words, when it says, listen to the way the Rebbe interprets the verse, Yoni. Ki menasa Hashem eschem, is lodas as Hashem. You know why Hashem tests us? So that we should experience, we can das in God. Not just a natural God, but a transcendental God. Because again, only with that reality of das in Hashem will we be able to overcome these big tsuras. V'yadu, and it's known, sh'anisoyin hu. What is a nisoyin? A test. It is shahanitzutz ho'eliki hu mustav v'nelim b'yoser. A test means, Yoinisim, that the spark of Hashem that finds itself in that particular test is very concealed, is very hidden, and it looks like, Moshe, what does it look like? I can't do it. There's a river in front of me. Hashem says, go there and there. I have to go into the river, and I'm going to drown. Well, the river also has a spark of God in it, but it's so concealed. So what you have to do is explore, dig up, and find in the river the nitzutz eliki, the godly spark, and then you'll succeed in crossing the river. Ukaklala yadua, and as the famous rule is, the hanitzaitzis, the sparks, shenaflu lamata, that fell below. I'll explain in a moment. Yoser, that fell very low into this world. Harisharshon, their source, who lemaila yoser, is much higher. Ukemai, the example that we give is koishel shelavonim, a wall of bricks. Hine ho'evin sheberoisha koishel, the brick, the stone, and the head of the top of the wall. Kishenefel, when it falls down, when the wall falls, hariu nefel, it falls lemerchat yoser, much further away, mina koishel, from the wall, mikemai, in comparison to Ho'evan, the stone, Shehu B'tachtis HaKoisel, that's at the bottom of the wall, the Kishehu Neuvel, when it falls, Hariu B'samach HaKoisel, it's near the wall. And that you can see even today in the southern wall of the Koisel, which you've been to and I've been to, right? There's a lot of fallen stones. And the archaeologists study them, and there's a difference between those that are very close to the wall and those that are further away. So, 1 second. So, what does the Rebbe say? He's saying the fact that these nitzutzos, these sparks of Hashem, are so dim that you don't even recognize that it's from Hashem, this trial and tribulation, which is there to test you. Why is it that it's so undetectable and unnoticeable that it's from God? It's because it really comes from such a high place in Hashem that when Hashem had it, quote, fall into the world, it fell very far away and it's not noticeable. And by the way, this was the Rebbe and the Chabad's position throughout the 60s and 70s, I mean, even before. But then, where many people shunned the hippies and everything else. And the Rebbe said, no, they have a very, very deep place in Hashem. And it's so concealed. Go find it, you'll find a great, great diamond. You hear that? So, I'm writing now about, the Bali Tshuva. So I'm talking about it. The Rebbe's view of the whole Bali Tshuva movement was from a totally different place. It wasn't about just making someone religious and making someone frum, which is all important. It's what we're learning now. That the neshama of the person who's gone so far that he looks and feels like the pariah and the one that everyone else shuns, dafke him and her is where you should go get everyone, but they really have something very special. I tell the story, right? A friend of Shmuel's, I'm not going to say his name, a good friend, in the valley when Rabbi Yeshua Gordon, Josh Gordon, the whole Melichtig and God Naden, what a special yid. He came out to the valley, and they had at the time in the 70s these groups, Chaburaz was very big. And he's teaching Torah and answering questions, and for a Chabad rabbi, this is like, the best. That's why he was sent. And there's 20, 30 people there. Maybe Shmuel was there, I don't know. Anyway, and everyone is sitting over there and asking the husbands and wives and people. And one guy is sitting on the floor in sweatpants, and Rabbi Gordon says yes, he says no. Rabbi Gordon says white, he says black. And his mom is giving him, and like everyone is getting like a little respect. And Gordon held his cool. And that person became such a Baal Tshuva and such a Chabad Chosid. And, v'chulu. In other words, the neshama was there, and the fact that he's arguing and is being obnoxious, okay? I speak about hippies, talk about being obnoxious. It's the same thing. In other words, very far. So Moshe, when the story with the Purim, whenever it was the Shikurim came in over there to H Kodesh, you have to look at them. They're really outrageous, but that's really where we can be Megala the neshama. It's in the outrage, and that was unique to the Rebbe's approach to Bali Tshuva, very unique, and that's why the Rebbe didn't see them. The Rebbe Yaakov never was against calling the movement Kirev Rechoikim, because the Rebbe said he's Rechoik and you're Karev. That's arrogance. Kirev Rechoikim. The Rebbe used the term again. Today, the general Baal Tshuva movement uses the word Kirchai, but the Lubavitcher Rebbe was not for that, and he told people, many people. He told George Rohr, and he told different rabbis, and he told the Rabbi Rashi, the former one, Rabbi Lau. Rabbi Lau came to him in the 80s, I think at either Yechidus, Yechidus. Lau repeated this in Kfar Chabad once at a Mesiba, and he said to the Rebbe that there's a lot of Kiruv V'choikim movements in Eretz Yisrael. And the Rebbe stopped him right there. He says, Rabbi Lau, they're not Rechoikim. It's not Kiruv Rechoikim. So in Chabad, what do we use the word? Hafotzas hamayonois chutza, the dissemination of the well springs to the outside. Or if you had to say it in one word, hafotza. Hafotza is the buzzword in the Chabad lexicon, which denotes what the world calls kiruv. But it's a whole different genre and ethos, what we mean. And both are important. I'm not chas v'sholem, knocking anyone, but I'm just saying it's a whole different mahalach. You're looking for the neshama. The neshama is very deep, and that's what I'm just saying this as examples, what the Rebbe speaks about nisyonos here, and he says that the nitzutzos in nisyonos are much further distant. So the dugmois, the examples I gave, are situations which are much more distant, but yet over there specifically is the kavana. And that's the way we need to look today at the youth, and with all the issues. And with this, we're going to have better results. If we look at the situations that it's nitzutzos that are very dim and very dark, but they're there, we're going to have much more. And that's what these young people are looking for, the love and the acceptance, and ultimately they grow in a healthy way. Chevra, have a great day. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Bye.